The text moves. That's weird. Okay. All right, Robin. So I'm going to be kind of talking to you and assessing your Agni today. Agni today. We've kind of reviewed that, kind of like the foundations of the element of fire and how it works in our body. So when we're interviewing someone, we ask clues. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Um, so first, what I do is I usually start by like zooming out and zooming in. So I usually like have the person talk about where they are and then move in. It's because environment is so important. And then you can find out what season they're in, and you can kind of build these clues. It's like in a screenplay, right? The person that writes the screenplay writes the scene first, and then the actors and the script and all that. So can you tell us a little bit about where you are physically and what season it is and what it's like there, the prakriti of the region you're in?
Yes, so I'm in Spokane, Washington. This is true actually. So I'm in Spokane, Washington, and it's currently snowing. We're getting 3 to 5 inches today. So I thought it was fall, but it just kind of changed to winter overnight over here.
Okay. And I guess just to start here, how would you say your appetite has been, or how would you say that because of the snow, have you noticed any changes recently, or?
I'd say an increased appetite since the snow.
Interesting. And but how's your digestion been? Has it been equally as good? Has it increased with that appetite, or have you been noticing increased indigestion or anything like that?
It's been very variable. So it's been sometimes like in the mornings it's more digestion, I feel like, and then towards later in the day it slows.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. And have you done the Prakriti Vikriti test? Do you know what your constitution is?
Yes. So originally I am Pitta dominant, and currently I am Vata dominant.
Okay. So you're kind of noticing some Vata imbalances, in other words.
Yes.
Okay. And that's kind of happening more towards the evening? You're kind of noticing that during the day you get up, maybe your digestion's like ready to go. And then you're saying like maybe towards the evening, about what time would you say you notice that? Is there like a specific hour that
I'd say usually about after lunch on.
Okay, so even early afternoon, it's already changing by that point. Okay. Are you taking any vitamins or supplements or right now at this point?
I'm not taking nothing on that list now.
Okay, that's easy to work with. And here, this is kind of.
Do you want me to just add some stuff to put more elements into the example?
If you want to, but that, or I was going to move on to like medical conditions or anything like that, or if there's anything that's kind of been coming up that, or any surgeries or recent, I guess, hospitalizations. Has any of that happened?
No, nothing recently.
Okay. And how would you say your stress levels are at this point? Are you working a full-time job? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel like you're juggling a lot of stuff, or do you feel maybe underwhelmed, understimulated?
Definitely the former. Overstimulated, okay. Overwhelmed.
Right. Do you feel like you're really good at managing those things, or do you feel like do you have good, I guess, stress mechanism or coping mechanisms, or what do you do to soothe yourself?
I'm starting to get a better hold of it. I would say I'm finding more of a routine. So for me, that's really important. And I was really just fluctuating, almost feeling like I was riding a roller coaster every day with what my workload was and what had to get done. So I think I'm in a better place now than I was a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Robin, nobody can hear you properly. You're really quiet. Do you think you can possibly get the speaker close to your mouth or increase the volume?
Yes. Is this better?
Oh, this is much better. Thank you.
No problem.
So I guess we're going to kind of move into the ahara or nutrition, or like what your day looks like, kind of piecing together like a scene, a scenario. So what time do you wake up in the morning?
I wake up around 5:30 or 6 a.m.
Okay.
Somewhere in between.
Is it easy for you to wake up, or are you groggy? Are you hitting the snooze button 45 times, or?
No, I'm ready to go.
Okay. Um, so when do you have your first meal of the day? Is it soon after you wake up, or do you have like a routine that you do? Would you be able to walk us through kind of what a morning looks like before work, or
Yeah.
just even on the weekends?
So usually I'll wake up around 5:36 and I'll jump in the shower. That's usually the first thing I do. And then I go into the kitchen, make myself some tea, make myself some breakfast. And it usually does contain some kind of toast or egg in that mix. And what else? I try to do about 15 or 30 minutes of yoga every day in the morning. And then I get dressed and I go to work. And I work all day.
Okay, so you have some time to kind of center yourself and kind of. Um,
Most mornings, on good mornings.
okay, that's actually great. That's a really good start. Um, so when do you have a bowel movement? Like when is your first bowel movement of the day, or what is? I guess does that come in the morning time?
Yes, and I would say within the first 30 minutes of me waking up.
Okay. And are your stools more? Would you say they're more? I guess um, pizza stools, and that they're Tichnagni. Would you say that you experience more like liquid stools, or yellowish stools, or burning stools, or are they more like sluggish and hard and dry? Like, is there a quality you could attribute to your stools that you've noticed a pattern of, or is it just all over the place?
It's pretty all over the place, but it's more so a looser form in the morning, and then it gets drier as the day goes on.
Okay, then okay. So as Vata in the evening goes on. Okay, that makes sense. Um, so yeah, there's definitely some Vishama Agni things going on. And that's how many hours pass in between your meals? Are you someone who kind of snacks a lot, or do you have like very strong pillars of time? Like this is my breakfast time, this is my lunch time, or are you someone who kind of is constantly feeling hunger?
Not intentionally. I have three square meals a day. Not that I really planned for that. And I would say in the morning there's 3 to 5 hours between the meal, and then for my evening it's 5 to 8. So I'm eating too late probably for dinner.
And your breakfast is usually pretty light. You're saying, in other words, you're having a tea. What kind of tea are you having, first of all?
It will change between like an Earl Grey and a rooibos.
So something that kind of is caffeinated or has like a stimulating but also bitter quality.
Yes, most of the time, yeah.
There's a lot of tannins in Earl Grey, which is bitter. We know that that can sometimes aggravate Vata, especially in fall. But there's things you can do to like add to the tea, like honey and things like that.
I
Um,
do add some local raw honey to it.
Ooh, good. That's super great for fall and being cold outside. It's got that sort of like heating quality to it that is so good for kapha, but so good for everyone really at this where you are in Spokane. But your breakfast is like toast and an egg, right? It's like a
Yeah, it's
um,
nothing too terribly heavy.
there's something kind of faster on the fast end of things.
Yeah.
Um, and can you walk us through what your lunch is like? I'm assuming you'll be at work at that point, right? And
Yes.
you'll be eating at work. Do you have a kitchen at work that you can prepare meals, or is this kind of like okay, you've got the time of your lunch break changes all the time? Is it just all over the place there, or do you have a pretty good structure around lunch like you do in the morning?
I have a pretty set time of when I eat lunch when I am at work. Um, the kitchen is pretty limited, so it's either going to be leftovers from the night before, or I bring in a soup, like an Amy's soup for lunch. And those
And
are usually the two.
they probably just have like a microwave.
Yeah, that's all I have, a microwave.
Yeah, and we know that microwaves just completely.
Kill food.
Yeah, we don't even have to say that. It just annihilates your food. Um, are you? What about? Wait, are you gonna be with like? Are you like around a lot of people when you're eating food? Are people like yelling? Or like, is your phone blowing up? Are you like texting people? Like, are you able to be in a? Is there any place you can be quiet at during your meal? I guess for lunch.
Yeah, I'm usually like it's like they put up like a makeshift wall that separates the office from the kitchen.
Hmm.
So I'm usually by myself behind this little wall where no one can see me. It kind of sounds sad, but I usually get about 30 minutes to eat, and then I go back to work, and I'm pretty much by myself, and it's pretty quiet.
Okay, 30 minutes. It's not a great deal of time, but
No,
also
no, you're eating. You're moving and you're eating.
we get what we get.
Yeah.
And so what would you say your biggest meal, would you say lunch is your biggest meal, or would you say your evening meal is your biggest meal? And also, what does your evening meal look like? You've probably gotten home at this point, and what does your evening look like?
So I'm trying to think of my past dinners. What did I have for dinner last night? My dinners are definitely my biggest meal. Last night, what did we have for dinner last night? Sorry.
Meatloaf and roast potatoes.
We had meatloaf and homemade meatloaf and mashed potatoes. So that's pretty heavy meat. The night before we did like a quinoa vegetable soup. And then the night before that we did, so it varies. We try to have days where we eat no meat a couple days a week, if that may help. And we have meat, I would say at least three meals a week, 3 or 4 meals a week.
And they're usually evening meals, right?
Yeah, they're usually those dinner meals.
Yeah, that's the thing about meat is like if we are going to eat it, then it's like during the day having that extra agni from the sun, having that extra solar energy helps us to digest it.
Oh yeah, and it's hard because you can't microwave meat. Like that's just like than just killing the meat. It's just disgusting.
Yeah.
So I usually eat meat at night, but because it can be like freshly cooked there or smoked, and yeah, it's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, in the evening it's even harder to digest, I feel like, in my experience. And sometimes people mitigate that by doing like a bone broth or something like that, and maybe reducing the amount of meat there's like first steps that people can do. It's not like it's just, like a kind of moving away from meat rather than just like a sudden, like stopping. And just to experiment, right? Just to see, like, is this helping me? And do I feel better? And like, there's usually a tangible feeling that you get. Like that lightness, it's more lagu, right? Because proteins in the meat. This is a really important question. I said, how much coffee do you drink a day?
If I drink coffee, it's only 1 cup, which I know sounds crazy, but only 1 cup. I used to be a lot worse, and I've kind of cut down. I do have a question though. I always have a glass of red wine at night. How does wine influence Agni?
For me, wine is like a vehicle. I consider wine as a vehicle for herbs, and certainly can be really good for vata after a meal, for indigestion, because its qualities are alcohol is, it's lagu, it's light, it's sharp, it's mobile, and it's hot. I mean, anyone who's ever vomited after drinking too much knows that alcohol is very heating. It completely leaves your esophagus in everything raw, and it feels like your respiratory tract even burns. Do you know what I mean? So wine is heating. It's a fermented thing. It's very young. It's very. I kind of like it in fall a little bit. It's really the quantity that's the amount. And for pitta people, I see it can be more aggravating, and especially if a lot of pitta people I know drink heavily, so it's even worse. But definitely it's fall right now. You know what I mean? So there's going to be more vata vitiation. Is a glass of wine in the evening? Yeah, I think it has really good potential to be really good, and it's up to you to see how you feel after you drink it. There's medicines in Ayurveda where we ferment things in jaggery and and make our own herbal wines that then we take after meals that are incredibly good for vata imbalance and actually are kind of magical. It seems like they work overnight. They're very, very, very beautiful medicines. So wine, I don't think Ayurveda is against wine in any sense. It's more just being aware of how you feel, and bringing that awareness to when we eat. That's, to me, that's the biggest step, right? I'm not going to be able to be there to like check everything that you eat, right? But you can be there for you to see the result, and everything can be like an experiment as you begin to curate things. So fall, go for it. Maybe have maybe not every night, but I've noticed when I drink wine, I can sometimes it even helps me digest a heavier an evening meal. Do you eat out a lot? Like, how often do you eat out?
How often do we eat out? Maybe now do we count eating out as like buying a can of soup, or does that mean going out to a restaurant out?
More like going to a restaurant where
Okay.
they're doing things in the kitchen you can't see.
Probably let me think about that. Twice a month? Maybe once a week. Let's do that. Once a week.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's not so bad. It's actually pretty good. Some of these questions. Oh yeah, let's talk about the feeling. Do you ever feel heavy after like eating something, or do you ever experience sleepiness or any of these kind of like digestive issues, burping, bloating, hiccups, flatulence? And if so, which one is the like predominant one, right? Because it's important to know if we do have gas, which direction it's moving, right? Vata, it's very important diagnostically to be like, oh, I'm burping more than I have flatulence. But is there any of these that kind of stick out to you that being like, oh, I experience this every time, or this has been really bad?
Definitely like a heaviness and sleepiness after dinner meals.
Mm.
I'm just really lethargic.
And that could be just from like maybe the season and also a work day.
But normally after I eat, I feel ready to go.
You feel energized.
Yeah, I feel pretty energized. I will say, like, for example, after like a meatloaf dinner, I'm ready for bed because it's so heavy.
Right. What about, water has to be digested as well. So if you're feeling heavy, I'm noticing there's going to be like maybe that, to me, that feels like kind of points to mandagni, right? Like kapha making the digestion sluggish. But first, before I qualify that, like, what is your water intake like? Do you feel like, do you feel bloated after you drink water, or are you drinking enough water? How many glasses would you say a day you drink?
I probably drink, how big is that thing? I probably drink about 5 glasses of water a day, so probably not enough.
Mm.
But I love to have ice in my water, which I know is also really bad.
Oh yeah. That's
Yeah.
that single-handedly could be the hetu in Ayurveda. We call that a causative factor. And for me, when I drink one glass of water that is cold, even in the morning, it completely disturbs my digestion for the rest of the day. And in fall, we have really a lot less wiggle room for vata aggravating foods and kind of like lifestyle things. Glass. If there's any way you could reduce ice, and it's kind of hard too, right? When you sit down in the restaurant, like your bum hasn't even hit the chair, and they're already giving you a huge, enormous glass of ice water. It's like it's not even consensual. It's just. But yeah,
Immediate sale.
yeah, it's an immediately they're trying to increase ama in your body, right? They're trying to destroy your agni before you take a bite. It's not personal. They just don't understand. But you understand, and you can, either like physically remove it from in front of your face so you don't take it. Like that's been my thing, right? It's like, oh, well, I just won't drink it, but it's still in front of my hands, and I'm, literally take the ice water off of the table and put it somewhere else.
Sorry, Connor, it's me. I think I may have put a form that was half filled by one of the students before. It says breakfast food, sausage biscuit on the way to work. So I'm going to remove that. That's what I posted on the forum. Sorry about that.
Oh.
Yeah, we did this for another group, and then she had written it. So sorry about that. In case everybody's wondering what sausage biscuit's doing on the form.
Let's see. So you're saying, so everything's pretty variable, the bowel nature and all that. Oh yeah, here's a good question. What flavors do you crave?
That's a good question.
Are you ever just like thinking about something, kimchi, something really sour, or?
It's interesting. When I was younger, I craved sweets like it was nobody's business. I mean, I always craved sweets, and I always attributed it to just being little and being a kid. And now I crave more salty things, the more savory flavors. What would you, how would you categorize like Asian foods? I always crave Asian foods. unique.
Oh, well, they have a whole range of, I mean, the word umami is like a
There you
Japanese
go.
word. It comes
Yeah.
from, they have sweet, they have sour, they have the salt, you know, and there's better quality foods, and then there's like lower quality foods which use worse, you know, lesser oils. Because if you're you know, especially fried things, right? People fry things in hundreds of billions of batches of, you know, fried whatever, and this oil is not good quality. That's one of the main things I notice about eating out. But these, you know, Asian food is, or Chinese, Korean, these foods are really actually pretty exquisite and balanced from what I've noticed, especially if you're getting into like macrobiotic stuff. That's a really great thing for balancing pitta, because we watch the sour, we watch the salty. And because you're craving sweet things when you were younger, it's like, okay, well, that's kind of, yes, that's a younger thing, a younger person thing, but it can indicate like more vata constitution. And then if you're craving salty things, that's also a normal vata craving. So
Okay.
if you're craving salty things, it's sometimes, you know, it's like,
Also pitta.
and
Pitta will
pitta.
also have sweet cravings as well. But Vata will also crave sweet and oily together. They want to have sweet fried things. So they would want something which is kind of hydrating and, you know, more like a cupcake or a muffin kind of situation. And Pitta might be craving something that's dry and sweet, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm like a chocolate chip cookie or muffin kind of person. But if I eat something too oily, my stomach is immediately flipped upside down.
Yeah,
Like
so
if there's
it's the
excess oil.
pitta in you. Yeah, what it happens, because pitta is also oil. Pittas cannot handle oil and fried foods very well. So when they crave something sweet, when you say you craved chocolate, chocolate is not sweet. Chocolate is actually very bitter, but sugar is added to it. So you actually, I will go ahead and say your craving was of sugar, of sweet and bitter, and it's pitta in you must have been imbalanced for you to crave that at that time.
Okay.
Yes, at least that's what I think.
Yeah, I had like a really high pitta when I was little. Like I think it was like 18 or something. I mean, my original constitution was really, really high pitta, and then it basically flipped when I did my Vikriti.
And how do you do with dairy products? Let me ask you that.
Dairy doesn't seem to bother me very much. It's more so like the excess oily stuff that's just an immediate reaction.
Okay.
That and super spicy stuff will give me an immediate reaction too.
That makes sense as well. It's funny. It's like it's good to have heating spices in fall, and because it kind of helps that variability in Vishamagni, right? That pungent spices is where we can give a Vata person. But if you're having like a pitta issue or your pitta constitution, we have to really, really get that dosage right. You know what I mean? More so than the others, right? More so than the kapha or the vata. We really have to. If we're using pungents with the pitta, it's just caution. Caution must be advised.
So warming and sweet spices along with the pungents, Connor.
Right, and right, adding them together and like a kind of like it helps you manipulate your dish a little bit more, and you can. It goes further, right? So I guess, I've kind of put together a little bit of like a picture, a snapshot of kind of a day during the week. And I guess for me, like the main takeaways are you don't do anything that's like really, really, really out of control and balancing. I think this really rushed lunch could be a thing, but there's nothing we can do about that. So the best thing would be to just maximize your time there. And then we talked a little bit about meat consumption and like moving away from that, or just like doing an experiment with like less meat and changing up different proteins, right? Because we have different lentils we talked about grains and things like that today, that there's protein in a lot of balanced and beautiful foods. So if we eat a lot of different things, we're naturally going to get all those lovely proteins that are so important, those ketogenic ones, those glycogenic ones, all the ones she listed today. But I guess your Agni, to, like I said, just like Vata protocol, if you can have like even just before bed in the evening, like warm milk or something that's just going to help like calm those winds, right? Because the quality of Vata is mobile. It's pushing that. We talked about Jatara Agni today, that Vata is so important. And if Vata is out of balance, how can Agni be?
Just one thing, the only two things that stood out for me was definitely there was a rushed lunch, but also and generally a very healthy diet normally, but eating meat at night is causing lethargy. So I
Right.
would say if you could move the heavy foods or be a pescatarian with mostly plant-based and fish as for a pitta person, and it should be roasted, it should not be fried or anything, that would be better on the system. I mean, you could try that one day, try having your protein in lunch instead of night, and see for 1 week do that and see if that you know gives you more energy.
And I would say my weakness is pork and beef. Those are like my two. Like, oh, I want to do backflips if they're like offered to me.
Yeah, so what you can do is do it only for lunch. So I've seen this happen because I've seen maybe 3,000 clients. And for a pitta person, both pork and beef are very, very high in animal fats. This has even nothing to do with protein. Now, animal fats, especially both with these two red meats, first of all, they're red meat, and red meat actually increases heat. And number two, because they're high in animal fat, the liver actually has to work double hard to get rid of it. And if you were to actually check the blood immediately after you eat animal fat, and that includes ghee for some people too, there's a layer of fat in the blood. So I would want to say that is something you probably want to limit to once a week. And if your diet could be like a pescatarian, fish, eggs, and mostly a lot of plant and vegetables, almost like a Japanese diet. You know how Japanese diet is, except they don't even do dairy. Almost like a Japanese diet. You have lots of vegetables, lots of fish, soups, and you anyway like the Asian food anyway. So that kind of diet would actually be the most balancing for you. And another thing is for pitta persons, your Ranjak pitta resides in the liver. So there's nothing wrong with you. You're a young person, you do yoga, you eat healthy, there's nothing wrong. But over the long run, every time there's a season change and every time you feel that there's something out of balance, you want to move over to a pescatarian diet and make sure that you're limiting the red meat.
And what about sushi? Because I also love sushi, but that's
I would rather you have sushi than you have red meat. Because it's
Absolutely.
easier to digest for a pitta person.
Yeah.
What do you think, Connor?
Oh, that's absolutely, I totally agree with that. I mean, if it's in the ocean, right, there's going to be more water element, less heating than a pig or a cow.
Yeah, that is another thing. Now, I don't know anything about sushi or fish, so help me here. But if it's coming from the lakes or fresh water, it's actually much better for a pitta person. If it's coming from an ocean, it's filled with salt element. So one of the things that a pitta person will find, I think you're a combination or you're just pure textbook pitta.
No, I'm a combination.
It feels combo here.
Yeah, if you're a combination, then it should not affect you. Yeah. Okay. But if you were like a typical textbook, then I would have said even stay away from anything that comes from the ocean. But I would say for now, being a pescatarian would probably be the best for you.
Interesting. And I always actually feel really light and good after I eat fish. I'm not even going to lie. I feel good.
Yeah. So that would, yeah. And the thing is, I mean, I have clients who like that kind of food too. And, we all like foods that are not good for us. I love my, Indian sweets, and they're really, really horrible for me, but I have to actually ask Atul because he's tall. He has to hide things from me so I wouldn't see them. I'm telling you, it's crazy. So we all have, he has to hide it. And I'm talking about Indian sweet with ghee and turmeric, So the idea is that, there are times when you're not feeling well. What is it that you need to go to when you're not feeling well is you need to move to never, ever, ever having animal-based protein for dinner, unless it's a fish. Very simple. Why? Because that, being a pitta person, it usually if you have tikshnagani, you can actually digest. But the fact that you get lethargic after you eat it, like Connor said, if you have to eat it once or twice a week and try and have it maybe for like a Sunday lunch, so that the energy from the sun, you have 7, 8, 9 hours to digest that. because once you're sleeping after eating, you're not digesting food. It's just getting converted into ama. And after 3-4 years of that ama conversion, it leads to a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Mandy, I mean, I do. Yes. Anyway, thank you, Robin, so much for being